we talk about someone that's obscure but phenomenal, Ora Washington definitely comes to mind. The way she absolutely dominated in both women's tennis and basketball was just unheard of. The fact that she is actually been forgotten in history is unbelievable.
Born in Caroline County, Virginia, on January 23, 1898, Ora's parents, James and Laura Washington, moved the family to northern Philadelphia for better economic opportunities. Ora Washington grew up in Germantown, Philadelphia in the 1910s, where she attended the Young Women's Christian Association.
Life back then for Ora was definitely difficult. Growing up in the era she grew up, life was extremely difficult. Extremely. She had to deal with segregation, racism at an all-time high, violence at an all-time high, and to make matters even worse, women were just simply not respected whatsoever. So to be African American and a woman in this country, she had a lot of obstacles to face.
Ora's life took a 180 after the death of her older sister, Georgia Washington. In the early 1920s, Ora felt lost after her older sister died of tuberculosis, but an instructor in the Germantown YWCA suggested she might soothe her grief by engaging in physical activity. That's when she picked up a racket, and from that point, she never looked back.
When Ora got on that court, it was unbelievable. The way she dominated like it was second nature. Her career took off like a rocket. You know, when people saw her take her first swing, they knew that she had that it factor. And it was just a foreshadow of a successful career.
In her first 5 years, Ora won numerous titles, and she held the ATA national title from 1929 to 1936. Over the course of her career, she would go on to win many more titles and become the greatest African American women's tennis player to ever pick up a racket. She won 12 straight double titles, 3 mixed double titles, and even 8 national singles crowns. But there was one match that Ora wanted to play to prove that she was truly the best.
You know, Helen Willis Moody was a force in the tennis world, dominated from the mid 20s to the early 30s. She was basically Ora Washington's counterpart. She dominated in Wimbledon and Forest Hills. But during those times, white people didn't want anything to do with our kind. It's the sad, honest truth, but they didn't want to do anything with our kind. So, of course, Helen declined the match. Now, me personally, I think she was afraid of the competition, and I think she was afraid of being beat by a colored woman.
Tennis wasn't the only sport Ora was dominant in. Ora moved to Chicago for a brief time where she learned the art of basketball. In the fall of 1930, Ora moved back home to Germantown and took over the basketball world. She began her career playing for the Germantown Hornets as their starting center. She was only 5'7", leading her team to a 22-1 record and securing a national championship in just her first year. Ora found her other true calling.
Like I said before, Ora was a beast at whatever she did. Her speed and overall athleticism made her unstoppable, which is why she was able to compete in both basketball and tennis without missing a beat. Her talents got her noticed around the city. Playing for the Hornets, she actually got noticed by a rival team in Philadelphia. They were called the Tribune Girls. It was a team organized by the city's oldest black newspaper, the Philadelphia Tribune. So before the next season started, Ora left the Hornets and joined the Tribune Girls.
For the next decade, they dominated the African American Women's Basketball League, only losing a total of 5 games. It was during her reign in the Basketball League that she was undisputably the greatest colored player in the world and the first black female superstar. Teams around the country wanted to play against Ora Washington and the Philadelphia Tribunes. After a while, though, women's college teams started disbanding during the Great Depression. But there was one team in North Carolina who recruited the best players in the nation and were just as good as the Philadelphia Tribunes.
when you see the rise of two powerhouse teams, it leaves you to wonder who's the best between the two. So when both teams agreed on scheduling an exhibit match, it was time to finally settle the debate. Who's the best team in the country?
Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. After dominating in both sports throughout the 40s, Ora played her last game in 1947. She left the sports world as one of the greatest athletes to ever play. However, that wouldn't last long.
Ora accomplished many things in her career. 12 undefeated years in tennis, 200 plus trophies in both tennis and basketball, you know, only losing 6 games in a 10-year span. And those were to men's teams, by the way. So it's hard to believe all that success didn't translate financially. But however, during those times, it didn't. During the post-war era, women's sports was looked down upon, so it wasn't taken as seriously as it is today. So during her career, she had to maintain her housekeeping job in order to support herself financially. So you can just guess that after she retired, she went right back to housekeeping. That was the only way she would be able to support herself. And during those years of retirement, her name got put on the dusty shelf. She was outshined by black sports titans that we know today, like Jackie Robinson, Althea Gibson. Althea Gibson and Wilma Rudolph, off the sacrifices that Ora made.
She didn't stray too far from sports. Ora started coaching tennis and gave free clinics on open courts in her hometown. Ora passed away on May 28, 1971, in her hometown of Germantown. Although she was forgotten during her last days on Earth, Ora was celebrated in 1976 when she was inducted into the Black Athletes Hall of Fame. She was then inducted into Temple University's Sports Hall of Fame in 1986. In 2009, she was elected to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and last, she was inducted into the Nesmith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2018.
Ora opened up many roads for African American women athletes such as Althea Gibson, the Williams sisters, some WNBA legends. In my eyes, Ora should be recognized as one of the greatest athletes in sports history. That is why it's very important that we keep her name alive. Although she was obscure, she was definitely phenomenal.